Hey y'all, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Cindy Hart's Crochet Podcast, where we talk about crochet and crochet accessories. Tonight is October 22nd, 2024. It is Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024. It's about 6:45 p.m. here in Pinson, Alabama, and I'm just coming to you to read a story to you again tonight. Mom and I have had a pretty full day today. Took her back to the orthopedic specialist today, and they took her cast off of her arm, but they have said do not use it. They didn't want to leave it on there in fear of it becoming too stiff or unable to use. At this point, she's hoping to get some range of motion back in it, and the main thing is get rid of some of that pain. So I'm hoping that she will listen to the doctor's orders and not be using it and injure it any further. Because I can only imagine, as bad as it has been hurting, I can only imagine if she accidentally hit it on something, and that would just that would send pains through my body for her. And then we left there, went to, that was good news, go back in 2 weeks, recheck that, re-x-ray it. It is still not healed properly, and it's not going to. So I've just continued to kick up her calcium and vitamin D3 in addition to her regular daily multivitamin, hopes that that would help some. And then we left there, went to the kidney doctor. So, as with her heart cath last week, she had a problem getting blood. She's too dehydrated, and her veins will not allow needles to find any blood. So, we have to go back for that one. So, I'm just hoping that she will hydrate herself, drink water, drink water, drink water. I'm going to get her some more, now she's wanting some lemon flavored stuff. She doesn't want the flavored water. The packets are okay with her, but I want to get her some of those hydrate packets that has the different flavors in it, and hoping that'll help at least kick her electrolytes up. And if everybody just keeps telling her to drink water, maybe she will listen. I mean, it just seems like, I couldn't stand to be stuck that much. I would be drinking some water just to keep from being a pincushion for everybody. So anyway, yes, tonight I'm going to read a story for you, but first, I'm drinking some good tea out of my cute little ghost puppy cup. Don't remember where I got it from. And it's still pretty hot, and I'm squishing the tea bags. That's why that spoon is in there. And this is cherry vanilla gourmet tea, and I got this at it's the company that made the tea is Neighbors Coffee, but where I bought it was, and you can tell who has been a host of my packaging. Where I bought it was at this place in Gatlinburg that is all cherry stuff. It's up in the arts and crafts area, the little shopping center that's all the arts and crafts, and it's cherries. I want to say it's something like Cherries Jubilee or some name like that, but it's got cherries in the name of the store, and that's where I got this. I also got a Cherry Pit neck warmer, which I guess you get me a warmer or a frozen an ice thing. But I got both of those at the in Gatlinburg last year. So yeah, and the tea does still have flavor. I left them in the sealed bags, excuse me, until time to drink them, and they still have some really good flavor. So these are still pretty hot, and I doubled up on my tea bags and did a 16-ounce cup of tea. It is a black tea, so it does have caffeine in it. Still hot, hot. Cute little doggy cup. I don't remember where I got that cup from. It may have been like a Ross or a Burlington type place too. So tonight, I'll be reading to you The Adventure of the German Student by Washington Irving. Go ahead and say hello. Come on, doggy dog. Say hello. Hey, doggy dog. Okay, so we're going to have to get down. Get down, get down, get down. She is just pushing towards me. I've been gone all day, so she missed me. Lay down, lay down. Let Mama read a story, okay? So this story is The Adventure of the German Student by Washington Irving, written in 1824. On a stormy night in the tempestuous times of French Revolution, a young German was returning to his lodgings at a late hour across the old part of Paris. The lightning gleamed, and the loud claps of thunder rattled through the lofty, narrow streets. But I should first tell you something about this young German. Gottfried Wolfgang was a young man of good family. He had studied for some time at Göttingen, yeah. But being of a but being of a visionary and enthusiastic character, he had wandered into those wild and speculative doctrines which have so often bewildered German students. His secluded life, his intense application, and the singular nature of his studies had an effect on both mind and body. His health was impaired, his imagination diseased. He had been indulging in fanciful speculations on spiritual essences until, like Swedenborg, he had an ideal world of his own around him. He took up a notion, I do not know from what cause, that there was an evil influence hanging over him, an evil genius or spirit seeking to ensnare him and ensure his perdition. Excuse me. Such an idea working on his melancholy temperament produced the most gloomy effects. He became haggard and desponding. His friends discovered the mental malady preying upon him and determined that the best cure was a change of scene. He was sent, therefore, to finish his studies amidst the splendors and gaieties of Paris. Wolfgang arrived at Paris at the breaking out of the Revolution. The popular delirium at first caught his enthusiastic mind, and he was captivated by the political and philosophical theories of the day. But the scenes of blood which followed shocked his sensitive nature, disgusted him with society and the world, and made him more than ever a recluse. He shut himself up in a solitary apartment in the Pays Latin, the quarter of students. There, in a gloomy street not far from the monastic whirls of Sorbonne, I have to wait. Okay then, that's my spooky for my spooky clock. It's not spooky, I love it. He shut himself up in a solitary apartment in the Pays Latin, the quarter of students. There, in a gloomy street not far from the monastic walls of the Sorbonne, he pursued his favorite speculations. Sometimes he would spend hours together in the great libraries of Paris, those catacombs of departed authors, rummaging among the hordes of dusty and obsolete works in quest of food for his unhealthy appetite. He was, in a manner, a literary ghoul, feeding in the carnal house of decayed literature. Wolfgang, though solitary and reclusive, was of an ardent temperament, but for a time it operated merely upon his imagination. He was too shy and ignorant of the world to make any advances to the fair, but he was an admirer of female beauty, and in his lonely chamber would often lose himself in reveries on forms and faces which he had seen, and his fancy would deck out images of loveliness far surpassing the reality. While his mind was in this excited and sublimated state, a dream produced an extraordinary effect upon him. It was of a female face of transcendent beauty. So strong was the impression made that he dreamt of it again and again. It haunted his thoughts by day, his slumbers by night. In fine, he became passionately enamored of this shadow of a dream. This lasted so long that it became one of those fixed ideas which haunt the minds of melancholy men, and are at times mistaken for madness. Such was Gottfried Wolfgang, and such his situation at the time I mentioned. He was returning home late on a stormy night, through some of the old and gloomy streets of the Marais, the ancient part of Paris. The loud claps of thunder rattled amongst the high houses of the narrow streets. He came to the Place de Grève, Southern, de Gravy. Oh my goodness. The square where public executions are performed. The lightning quivered about the pinnacles of the ancient Hotel de Ville and shed flickering gleams over the open space in front. As Wolfgang was crossing the square, he shrank back with horror at finding himself close by the guillotine. I put stickies on here to help, and it's not helping. It was the height of the reign of terror when this dreadful instrument of death stood ever ready, and its scaffold was continually running with the blood of the virtuous and the brave. It had that very day been actively employed in the work of carnage, and there it stood in grim array amidst a silent and sleeping city, waiting for fresh victims. Wolfgang's heart sickened within him, and he was turning shuddering from the horrible engine, which he beheld a shadowy form, cowering as it were at the foot of the steps which led up to the scaffold. A succession of vivid flashes of lightning revealed it more distinctly. It was a female figure, dressed in black. She was seated on one of the lower steps of the scaffold, leaning forward, her face hidden in her lap, and her long disheveled tresses hanging to the ground, streaming with the rain which fell in torrents. Wolfgang paused. There was something awful in this solitary monument of woe. The female had the appearance of being above the common order. He knew the times to be full of vicissitude, and that many a fair head, which had once been pillowed on down, now wandered houseless. Perhaps this was some poor mourner whom the dreadful axe had rendered desolate and alone, and who sat there heartbroken on the strand of existence, from which all that was dear to her had been launched into eternity. He approached and addressed her in the accents of sympathy. She raised her head and gazed wildly at him. What was his astonishment at beholding, by the bright glare of the lightning, the very face which had haunted him in his dreams. It was pale and disconsolate, but ravishingly beautiful. Trembling with violent and conflicting emotions, Wolfgang again accosted her. He spoke something of her being exposed at such an hour of the night, and to the fury of such a storm, and offered to conduct her to her friends. She pointed to the guillotine with a gesture of dreadful signification. "I have no friend on earth," said she. "But you have a home," said Wolfgang. "Yes, in the grave." The heart of the student melted at the words. "If a stranger dare make an offer," said he, "without danger of being misunderstood, I would offer my humble dwelling as a shelter, myself as a devoted friend. I am friendless myself in Paris, and a stranger in this land. But if my life could be of service, it is at your disposal, and should be sacrificed before harm or indignity should come to you." There was an honest earnestness in the young man's manner that had its effect. His foreign accent, too, was in his favor. It showed him not to be a hackneyed inhabitant of Paris. Indeed, there is an eloquence in true enthusiasm that is not to be doubted. The homeless stranger confided herself implicitly to the protection of the student. He supported her faltering steps across the Pont Neuf, and by the place where the statue of Henry IV had been overthrown by the populace. The storm had abated, and the thunder rumbled at a distance. All Paris was quiet. That great volcano of human passion slumbered for a while, to fresh strength for the next day's eruption. The student conducted his charge through the ancient streets of the Pays Latin, and by the dusky walls of the Sorbonne, to the great dingy hotel which he inhabited. The old portress who admitted them stared with surprise at the unusual sight of the melancholy Wolfgang, accompanied by a female companion. On entering his apartment, the student, for the first time, blushed at the scantiness and indifference of his dwelling. He had but one chamber, an old-fashioned saloon, heavily carved and fantastically furnished with the remains of former magnificence, for it was one of those hotels in the quarter of the Luxembourg Palace, which had once belonged to nobility. It was lumbered with books and papers and all the usual apparatus of a student, and his bed stood in a recess at one end. When lights were brought and Wolfgang had a better opportunity of contemplating the stranger, he was more than ever intoxicated by her beauty. Her face was pale, but of a dazzling fairness, set off by a profusion of raven hair that hung clustering about it. Her eyes were large and brilliant, with a singular expression approaching almost to wildness. As far as her black dress permitted her shape to be seen, it was of perfect symmetry. Her whole appearance was highly striking, though she was dressed in the simplest style. The only thing approaching to an ornament which she wore was a broad black band round her neck, clasped by diamonds. Give me a little sip. That tea is so good. The perplexity now commenced with the student how to dispose of the helpless being thus thrown upon his protection. He thought of abandoning his chamber to her and seeking shelter for himself elsewhere. Still, he was so fascinated by her charms, there seemed to be such a spell upon his thoughts and senses, that he could not tear himself from her presence. Her manner, too, was singular and unaccountable. She spoke no more of the guillotine. Her grief had abated. The attentions of the student had first won her confidence, and then, apparently, her heart. She was evidently an enthusiast like himself, and enthusiasts soon understand each other. In the infatuation of the moment, Wolfgang avowed his passion for her. He told her the story of his mysterious dream, and how she had possessed his heart before he had ever seen her. She was strangely affected by his recital, and acknowledged to have felt an impulse towards him equally unaccountable. It was the time for wild theory and wild actions. Old prejudices and superstitions were done away. Everything was under the sway of the goddess of reason. Among other rubbish of the old times, the forms and ceremonies of marriage began to be considered superfluous bonds for honorable minds. Social compacts were the vogue. Wolfgang was far too much a theorist not to be tainted by the liberal doctrines of the day. "Why should we separate?" said he. "Our hearts are united. In the eye of reason and honor we are as one. What need is there of sordid forms to bind high souls together?" The stranger listened with emotion. She had evidently received illumination at the same school. "You have no home nor family," continued he. "Let me be everything to you, and rather let us be everything to one another. If form is necessary, form shall be observed. There is my hand. I pledge myself to you forever." "Forever?" said the stranger solemnly. "Forever," repeated Wolfgang. The stranger clasped the hand extended to her. "Then I am yours," murmured she, and sank upon his bosom. The next morning the student left his bride sleeping, and sallied forth at an early hour to seek more spacious apartments suitable to the change in his situation. When he returned, he found the stranger lying with her head hanging over the bed and one arm thrown over it. He spoke to her, but received no reply. He advanced to awaken her from her uneasy posture. On taking her hand, it was cold. There was no pulsation. Her face was pallid and ghastly. In a word, she was a corpse. Horrified and frantic, he alarmed the house. A scene of confusion ensued. The police was summoned. As the officer entered the room, he started back on beholding the corpse. "How did this woman come here?" he cried. "Do you know anything about her?" said Wolfgang eagerly. "Do I?" exclaimed the officer. "She was guillotined yesterday." He stepped forward, undid the black collar around the neck of the corpse, and the head rolled on the floor. "Ah!" The student burst into a frenzy. "The fiend! The fiend has gained possession of me!" shrieked he. "I am lost forever." They tried to soothe him, but all in vain. He was possessed with the belief that an evil spirit had reanimated the dead body to ensnare him. He was distracted and died in an asylum. And that is all of the story for this evening. Ooh, that was scary. He picked up a chick down at the guillotine, right? And took her home. What? Why would you do that? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story for tonight. They are short. They seem to be maybe pieces of longer stories or something, but I'm not seeing the longer stories that they are pieces of. So I hope you're enjoying the readings, and I'm going to try to keep it up through the end of the month. This thing, though, yes, my budgie is my sweet doggy, Say, hey, dog. Anyway, I am needing to finish my dishcloth for tonight. I am almost finished. I still like the eyes and the nose, I do believe, and then sewing it together. Hopefully I can get a picture to Laura before it has to be submitted. And then working on a few more. I've worked on more ribbons for the Breast Cancer Awareness Month today while Mama was in doctor's. And then we also visited my aunt in Coleman, my Aunt Linda. Hey, Linda. She doesn't watch either. We did drive to North Alabama and visit her. I was starving for a baked sweet potato, which we could not find at any stores. I mean, I was going to bake it. I was going to bake me, Mama, and Linda one at her house while we were visiting, and could not find a single sweet potato in the 2 stores that we stopped at. So, with me being limited on what I can eat here lately, I was really, really hungry for that. So, I thought that would be good and nutritious for me, and maybe help fill me up a little bit. And then the only other thing that brought me down was the fact that we were waiting to stop at this place in Blunt'sville, Alabama, or actually Cleveland, Alabama, to get ice cream, because we stop there almost every time we come back and forth and get ice cream. I could probably eat ice cream too, because it's soft, right? But no, they did not have a dip for their ice cream. Nothing to scoop it with. I'm like, here, starving here. But anyway, I'm going to go over here and fix me some good old fake mashed taters in a cup. May sprinkle some cheese in there. Get a little fancy tonight. And hopefully my side will start feeling better soon. It still has not, but I do need to get in touch with my doctor tomorrow and see what I can do about it. So yeah. All right, y'all have a good evening. I will come back with a story for tomorrow night. I do have a book that is works of Edgar Allan Poe. However, those are pretty long. So I may try to do a couple of tales from there. If anyone likes Edgar, I mean, everybody likes Edgar Allan Poe, right? So if you have a favorite Edgar Allan Poe, put it in the comments below and let me see if it's in this book, and maybe I'll read it for you. And he's always a spooky kind of person. So I may try to get another short story in tonight, so I may have the same shirt on tomorrow night, but it will really be tonight, but tomorrow night. And I will see y'all later. Love y'all. Bye.